Hello, everybody, and welcome to Elan Vital. This is a special edition podcast where we invite a guest on to talk about life. Let's discuss how we first came up with this idea. Mariah, tell us what Elan Vital means.
Elan Vital, in the noun, is the creative force within an organism that is responsible for growth, change, and necessary or desirable adaptations. So after hearing the definition, I believe that I came to the conclusion that finally there were words to what I felt subconsciously about all of us, that through life there is an internal drive that pushes us to grow and change. And yes, there are plenty of external forces at work as well, but it's beautiful to think about our souls ever evolving and changing. So Ethan and I came up with the idea to sit down and speak with people about this inward journey that is changing the journey through life for them externally, and come to see that at a basic level, we're all human, struggling, changing, becoming ourselves more and more. So this podcast branch will be the study of that life force within all of us, Elan Vital. So stay tuned and hear stories of life, love, tragedy, laughter, and life force. This is a safe space, and we ask that you take into account how brave these individuals are for opening up their lives and souls to us.
Yeah, I think we're trying to understand other people and ask them how they experience life, what thoughts they take note of, and what they give their attention to.
Yeah.
Because we all live a unique life. Nobody has lived your life except you. And I think the more that we talk to people, the more that we can learn in general.
Yes. Yep.
And
so
today we had on with us our good friend Josh, and he was super awesome to talk to. He's just a great, fun, interesting guy.
Yeah. I'm super thankful that he was willing to open up and share his experiences. I hope that everyone can take in his account and learn something, and just appreciate his journey and maybe appreciate their own journey in retrospect.
All right, without any further ado, here's Josh.
What they're doing. Most recently, I was excited to watch a presentation by an organization called MAPS. They are the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Research. They just got some exciting stuff pushed through with the FDA, and they had a big presentation talking about all of what their next steps are going to be and what they're going to be working on over the next year. And so that's kind of a topic that I'm really excited about, and I really love supporting everything that they're doing. So that's been big on my week.
What do you know any of the particulars with the passing with the drug administration?
So they've been doing a lot of testing over the last, several years. They've been working on this, and they have clinical studies where what they'll do is they'll partner people who are in need with therapists that do psychedelic-assisted therapy sessions. And what that means is they'll do sessions where they're providing therapy to the patient. They're actually talking to them and getting to know them. And then they're doing sort of a placebo session with the patient where they're not actually on the psychedelic, but they're getting to experience the environment and some of the stimulus that you would have, which generally how they set it up is you're in a room laying down on a couch, very comfortable with somebody that you know and feel comfortable with either music or a blindfold, something that's just to not make you so aware of your environment. You're really supposed to be focusing inward. And so then they'll have a session that actually does include the psychedelic, and then they have a post-therapy session that sort of integrates what they took away from it and helps them just move forward. And so the studies they've been doing have been putting 200 or 300 people through different therapy sessions like that, and they may have even done more than that, but just in the most recent figures they were talking about, it was numbers like 200 and 300 people where it's partnered with an actual medical therapist and then a doctor who's kind of witnessing the situation and seeing what's going on, taking notes. And what they're doing with the next phase, so with the FDA, what they were able to do is be permitted to use the term breakthrough therapy. And I don't want to go into the specifics too much because I don't want to butcher it. I would just recommend Googling FDA and then MAPS, because they're allowing people to basically use the term breakthrough therapy sessions for specifically MDMA, which this is amazing because MDMA, which is also called Molly, is largely been a party drug. But Illinois has actually moved forward, and I talk about Illinois laws because I was from there, and I'm excited about kind of what they're working on. They just recently passed legalization for marijuana laws in January. But even before that legislation went through, MAPS and some of the work that they had been doing already got legislation changed with laws surrounding psychedelics, specifically the ones that affect that MAPS was using, which are MDMA.
Wow.
Yeah.
I had no idea about that.
Yeah, it's really cool. And so the next studies that they're going to be working on, the FDA is basically saying, like, and this is going to sound very strange and counter to what most people would think or want, but the FDA is basically saying, like, okay, if you're finding this much success with, and they have a specific criteria for patients that they have to put the treatment through. So primarily they've been working with like veterans who have PTSD and patients who have long-term untreatable depression, major depression cases, and it's just stuff like that that's more specific. The FDA is actually requiring that they branch out now and do studies with like kids who are dealing with trauma or other situations, or even like mental kind of things that they may be going through.
Okay.
Mental illness types of things. Yeah. And so it's really exciting because we always limit these possible ways of healing for adults or for the elderly. You know, we think of psychedelics or weed as being beneficial for cancer patients or end-of-life patients. And they're really doing work that's saying if there's somebody who's dealing with trauma, it could actually be a good opportunity for them as an alternative to some of the major pharmaceutical things that are out there.
Yeah,
that's amazing. Wow.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, I'm stoked about everything that they're doing. I mean, I spend a lot of my free time listening to audiobooks and kind of catching up on the medical research that's going on in the field of psychedelics.
Sure.
Just because over the last few years, I've had a couple experiences that were just really revelational, or not revelational maybe, but just really had a significant impact on me.
Yeah.
And I wanted to understand that. And the medical field ended up being the group of people that were doing the research, which was cool for me because you end up learning like scientific terminology and medical terminology about the body while also learning about, mind expanding hallucinations and stuff. It's weird.
Yeah. Talk to me about your... go ahead and ask your question, Mariah.
No, it's all right. Go ahead.
Talk to me about your personal experience. Yeah, so I've had a couple experiences that were actually really spurred on in an interesting way, I guess. Like I wouldn't say that I came from a background that really set me up to have these experiences. Like as a kid, I was in a very conservative, religious, homeschooled family, and so drugs, smoking, alcohol, the whole like of that to me was in a big area of, I looked down on it very seriously. And so as I got older, I had experiences where I was exposed to smoking weed, and that really helped me with a couple things I was dealing with. Like just as an example, I had been dealing with some sleep apnea, borderlining insomnia, and smoking weed just kind of came in and resolved that for me. And I was so surprised. Sure. I was about 19 or 20 when I started smoking, so I would say that it was a bit of a gateway in a sense. But it was several years later that I actually experienced psychedelics. And so I had a friend who introduced it to me just basically in a way where he was trying to expose me to something that would help me get back on my feet. I was going through a bit of a depressive phase, and he was actually trying to do a bit of a therapy type session. It was like what the MAPS organization is doing, but underground, very much like not
He was your street shaman.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so my very first experience, we went out onto a beach and literally, I think what we took was ecstasy, which I don't know the alternative scientific name for that one, but we basically just took it and sat on the beach and meditated for about an hour. And it wasn't about walking around or, partying or being in a group of people. Like, we truly sat at the beach and were in a meditative state. And while we meditated, I had internal visions that were really profound. Like, I was having this vision of a massive, almost concrete building that was, no windows or anything like that, but many rooms inside of it. And throughout the vision, it was like this colorful movement was going through the building and unlocking doors that were locked and unlocking almost like prisoners that had been kept inside of there. And so it was a very unusual thing, and I didn't understand what was happening. But post the fact, the next weeks and months, I had a sense of relief throughout my day, and I had a sense of calmness. And also I had a sense of like forgiveness, and that I let go of things that I had been holding on to, where I would find myself, and I'm talking about weeks later after the experience, I would find myself calmer in a situation or not reacting to a situation the way that I used to, or not necessarily being so riled up by emotions or triggered by them the same way that I used to. And in reflecting and meditating, I had to acknowledge that it was through the psychedelic experience that I had that I was able to unlock that. So, yeah, from there, I stayed away from it for a long time just because it wasn't really accessible. I mean, even living in California, I had access to weed basically more than Starbucks. Like, there are more dispensaries around generally than there are Starbucks, and there's about 5 Starbucks coffee shops within 1 or 2 miles of me, so it's pretty extreme.
That's crazy.
Yeah. But even still, the access to psychedelics out here was really limited.
Yeah.
And so it was years later until I had other experiences, but I ended up getting exposed to psilocybin mushrooms, magic mushrooms, which were also very powerful. And those helped me deal with just treating some depression. Like everybody says, oh, I have depression, or they're dealing with depression, which I related to. But I was able to resolve that through using mushrooms. And the reason I'm so excited about what MAPS is doing, the work that they're doing, is because one of my more powerful experiences was using MDMA. And that experience, I was alone in my house. I waited until my roommates and everybody were gone, and I laid down on a couch. And it was about a 4-hour experience where in this vision, and they're hallucinations, but I call them visions. And it's really just the hallucination of what your imagination is kind of conjuring up because of what you took. But in that experience, I had a guide, in a way, that was leading me through this, almost like a facility that was me. It was like I was walking through the inside of my spirit, in a way, being shown different parts of myself. And it was a very loving thing, so it helped me realize that there were areas of my life that I needed to fix out of a love, like out of a responsibility to take care of myself, and because of the connectedness that I shared with others, I had that responsibility. And so when I came out of that, the weeks and months post that experience, I found that the thing that was changed in me was that I no longer had a craving for alcohol, which was weird and totally unexpected. I, prior to that, had been not addicted, but drinking alcohol a lot heavier than I could handle, and it was beginning to affect my life, and I was sort of losing the grip on it, to where, like, it was affecting my job, it was affecting friendships, it was affecting just social experiences that I was having. And I wasn't expecting for MDMA to have an impact on that at all, but after I took it, my body had gone through a chemical change where it was like it rejected alcohol. The smell of it bothered me, the taste of it actually bothered me, and that is maintained, like, still to this day.
Wow.
So I'm very excited with MAPS actually having a scientific and medical approach to it, because they're able to partner with people. They have sessions where, if somebody's panicked or if they're having a hard time, They have trained people who know what to do. And they're able to actually guide people through these experiences. I'm thankful that I had the experiences that I did, but I think I was doing a lot of the prerequisite therapy work by getting into like self-help books in a way, and different sacred texts. Like I got really into the Bhagavad Gita, which is the Hindu sacred text, and I've always kind of studied the theology and doctrines of the Bible. So I was integrating that into healing, and I think having that sense, and also I was doing yoga every day beforehand too. So I think all of those things combined allowed me to have a therapy experience without the professional side of it.
Yeah.
So
do you think that because the medical field is taking like an interest in these things, that like people are going to become more aware of what's already out there? Or do you think, I mean, it seems like generally when scientists take attention out of their day for something, that like things get done and people pay attention? Or do you think it's just something that they'll study for a while and then like people will still continue to ignore that like there are things that we can do to like better ourselves and like help our conditions of depression and anxiety and such?
No, I mean, I think that it's definitely going to be carried on and continue to pick up steam. What I've learned is that after I took the psychedelics, I thought that I was having such a new experience. I thought it was something that had not, like it was brand new to me. Nobody else had gone through it. And when I began to read, like one of my favorite books is a book called Smoke Signals and a book called Acid Dreams by Martin A. Lee. But he talks about the history of the activist movement of psychedelics. And you realize that you're not doing something new. You're a part of a movement that's been happening for a long time. And it's just now getting to the point where the medical people are branching in and working with it. But I do think they're going to pick it up. And more people will know about it. But the problem, what I don't want to see happen is I don't want to see the medical and scientific community pigeonhole a certain type of person into being what they consider a qualifying individual for the psychedelic experience. Because what the scientists and medical community are using to measure their results in the psychedelic experiences are some actual like metrics. They're calling it a mystical experience that they're saying a person is going to have on the psychedelic, and the mystical experience is defined by a sense of feeling of forgiveness, feeling unity and connected to others, connectedness to whatever is a higher power that is out there, a sense of love. And so the scientific community is actually measuring those things and saying, yeah, we can see that a psychedelic experience is providing this mystical experience. And without the mystical experience, we don't think that the person is able to have the same type of healing. And so why I don't want to see them pigeonhole people is because the mystical experience is not just for people who have cancer or end of life or trauma. Like, you don't need to have life trauma to be qualifying to have a mystical experience, to feel love and unity to others.
Right.
I think that
anybody could find benefit.
Correct.
Yeah.
So do you know, Josh, like off the top of your head, like what the prerequisites are right now that they're like identifying, like as they're researching? Who are the participants?
At the moment, I'm not sure what the qualifications are to actually go into the study. I do have people who have been wanting to get sort of partnered with MAPS on a personal level. So it is something that I'm interested in finding out. I do know that their website is pretty expansive and you can sign up to be part of the studies. It's just maps.org, which is slamming that they have that. But at maps.org, you can either like donate to them if you support them, or you can sign up to be a part of their studies, which I don't know if they cost anything. The one thing, one of the reasons why I think it's going to pick up steam, and one of the reasons why MAPS is partnering with the FDA, is because just the overall yearly cost, I think they said it was like $6 billion. I don't want to over-exaggerate or be wrong with my number, so I don't want to be like, sure, don't quote me on that, but I believe they said it was somewhere like $6 billion was being spent on medical treatment and therapy for people who had PTSD. And that wasn't just military people with PTSD. That was all kinds of PTSD. And they're saying that the annual cost of that is, you know, if that's $6 billion, if somebody was allowed to use something like MDMA, which is so cheap to produce, and you only need to have one experience, it's not as if, you know, you're really taking the thing on a regular basis and you're prescribed to it where it's like morning and night, you got your pills.
Yeah.
This is just something you do once, and they're saying it would dramatically reduce the budget for that type of healthcare.
Do you know I mean, you guys may have already known this, but something that really surprised me was I was talking with a friend who mentioned that they knew someone that has PTSD, but they weren't like related to the military at all. And for some reason, it just like took me back, because I've always related PTSD with military members. Right. And then like, even if you look at the title, it's post-traumatic stress disorder. Like generally, like that doesn't mean military. But for me, it was just like, oh, other people can have PTSD outside of like going to war. That makes sense. Like, I don't know, like that probably sounds really silly, but I have to interject that. No, it was surprising to me. Yeah, like I've always just related the two together and have never realized that like people that haven't gone through like, you know, like war could pick up on something like that.
I have a friend who has a pretty severe case from a car accident.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Couldn't drive in anything except like anything smaller than a Ford F-250 was too small for him.
Wow.
That actually makes sense.
Yeah.
A car accident is so scary.
Yeah. Wow. So in like your experiences, Josh, who do you think like you are, or who do you think you're becoming? Like in all of the experiences that you've had, is there anything like specific that comes to mind?
I think I'm just growing as an individual, and I think what I'm realizing is that honestly, I'm just thankful for my experiences. I always go back in time, you know, like we have the gift of imagination, and so I always go back and imagine when I was younger and sort of play out what my life could have been like or would have been like, and not in an unhealthy way. Like, I don't think you should dwell on that or obsess over it, but I will go back and I'll kind of play out what would my life have been like if these decisions would have worked out differently, or I would have had other opportunities. And honestly, like I think I was such an undeveloped person. Like I had so many wrong tendencies. I had so much selfishness. I had so much carelessness. Even like we have a generation where we talk about being against racism and prejudice, and I grew up in I already said, a conservative homeschool group, so I had a sense of self-righteousness, thinking I'm not racist, I'm not prejudiced, and I am a good person because I do all these things. I have a checklist. And as I got older, kind of going back and looking at that, I needed to wake up and see that I am a part of the world. I'm a part of a bigger system. And the overall theme of needing to love people, it sounds so cheesy, and it's always like the hippie theme that comes back of like love and, you know, love unconditionally or whatever, peace and all that. But what I really have learned is that some of the structures that I valued needed to come down so that I could actually be a part of society. I was a bumbling idiot in ways, and I had anger issues that I was dealing with that I needed to work through. So I'm just thankful to have been able to go through those experiences and feel like, oh, it's not that I'm a part of society so much, but I feel more comfortable and around, normal with people, I guess.
Yeah.
Which sounds weird, but I think it's important. I know who I am.
Yeah. I feel like, this may just be me, but I feel like I was the same way. Like, just like you said, there was a checklist. Like, oh, I meet all of these criterias. I'm fine. I'm self-righteous. But, like, looking back, it's like, wow, that was crazy. Like, I should never have acted like that in, like, light of how people are and, like, getting to know more and more people and from, like, different backgrounds. Like, it's just, like, how dare I? Yeah. But the thing is also, like, I feel like when you're young, you don't have, unless you have a group of individuals that, like, encourage you to grow and be humble and respectful of other individuals, like, how do you even know to not be that way? Like,
yeah.
It's like, yes, like, you look back and you're like, wow, like, that was crazy. But then it's also like, but how would I have known because of who I was around? Like, how would I have known to have been better? I don't know. Does that make sense? Like,
absolutely. I was actually just talking to somebody about that who was saying a lot of times when we hear about the actions that other cultures or other people will do that we judge, it's like it's what they do because it's what they know.
Yeah.
And we can't understand that because we've never put ourselves into that position. Mm-hmm. But it is truly what they know.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily an excuse. It's just like, how do people know to be better if they're not being shown that what they're doing is, like, not entirely correct, I guess, essentially.
Yeah. It takes humility, I think, as time goes on, to realize how much you don't know.
Yeah.
And be open to learning.
Yeah, I definitely agree.
So, where are you at today? Like, how are you growing yourself today and going through? Obviously, you're very interested in, like, the medical research of psychedelics that can help us heal and process who we are.
Right.
Is there anything else, that you're growing connected with to continue on, like, branching out?
Definitely. After those experiences, I had to ground myself, and it's interesting because you can't become so focused on it. Like, I often find myself talking about the psychedelics because I'm trying to share with people that there's ways to expand their minds or open up or move beyond some of the struggles that they've been having. Mm-hmm. But what's really important after that is that you still reintegrate yourself into society in some way and participate. And so definitely I've had to take on habits. It was really hard for me at first because some of the experiences that I had made it difficult for me to just go into work every day. One experience in particular shocked me. One psychedelic experience that I had shocked me so much and was almost so scary that it made it difficult for me to feel like I could just go every single day and clock into this job that I wasn't really liking and wasn't really enjoying. And it was like having the conscious expansion to see that there's more going on just made it so hard for me to feel like I could stay there. And so since then I've been kind of trying to work on growing as an individual. I really try to set my schedule for one day at a time. Like, it's really a strong mentality that I have that we only have today, and tomorrow may come. Yesterday's gone, but what we have is today.
Yes.
So I'll wake up. I used to be a night owl. I would stay up as late as I possibly could and then sleep till noon or 1 or whatever. But I find myself, the older I get, waking up earlier. Nowadays, I set a clock either for 4, 5, or 6 a.m., but I'll try to even wake up sometimes before my clock and beat that. It fluctuates and it varies. But the earlier that I can wake up and start my day, I just have this sense of excitement and gratitude for life where now I want to take on these opportunities and I want to make my daily routine reflect the things that I love and the things that I value. So right away when I wake up, a lot of people have the tendency where they're like, I wake up and I don't look at my phone. It's like, well, I actually wake up and I do look at my phone. I look at my phone right away because as soon as I go to bed, I've silenced it, and friends and family reach out to me and they text me and I've ignored them. So right away I look at it and I start trying to respond to those people because I'm not moving around and I'm not engaged with my day.
Yeah.
And it's a space where, you know, I have a lot of family in Louisiana or Illinois or just spread out, and they'll text me all the time. So it's my quiet time to respond to those people. And then once I've had a minute to engage with them and talk to my family, I feel like my brain's working enough to where I can respond to the emails and the other notifications that have come in. So normally I would say it's funny, people don't like looking at their phone in the morning, but I look at all that stuff right away, get it out of the way, and then I move on with my day to where I don't have to focus on it.
That actually makes sense because, like, I've always heard, like, inspirational speakers, and I do this myself. Like, I don't turn on my phone for a while until I've had my coffee and I've, like, woken up fully. But that actually does make sense because you have the time and space to just sit there and focus entirely. And then the moment you get up, you, like, do the things that you want through the rest of the day. That actually, like, makes sense as a routine. I think you're the first person to say that.
Sorry, what was up, Ethan? No, I don't mean
I was
to cut
just
you
going to
off.
ask, can you expound on how you think waking up earlier is improving your outlook?
Oh my gosh, so much so. First off, there is nothing more incredible than being able to wake up before the sun and then see the sunrise. I love nature. Like, to me, the most important thing that I've learned and through my psychedelic experiences has just been my connection to nature. So I love it. And when I wake up before the sun comes up and then I get to see the sunrise, it's a sense of joy that I have. I'm usually listening to music too, getting myself pumped up for the day. Yeah. So that's a sense of joy that I have. But I find too that people always talk about, oh, there's not enough hours in the day. I can't get enough done. And I asked them, like, well, how much TV are you watching? How early are you waking up? Like, and it's not to insult TV. It's not to insult how early people wake up. I do think that being able to disengage and watch TV or play video games is an extremely healthy habit. Elon Musk, who is a person I love and am greatly inspired by, plays video games, I think, almost every night. I don't know if he does it still, but there was a time where he was known for playing video games every single night.
Wow.
Yeah. So I think it's awesome. Good and there's merit to it. But for me, waking up early just was a way of being able to get more out of my day. Okay. I still find myself staying up late sometimes, but I do try to go to bed earlier. But it's just about taking advantage of my time. I also am such a loner that, like, I like being sort of having my quiet space and living in LA. This is funny and it's true, but it's definitely something I've seen over the years. People here are definitely more laid back, and they tend to wake up between like 8, 9, and even sometimes 10 in normal work days. So if you wake up at it's pretty crazy. So if you wake up at 4 and 5 a.m., you are waking up with the serious go-getter business people and everybody, people who are working in LA, but you're also getting this crazy quiet space. There's almost no traffic. No one is awake moving around. No one is bustling. And it's just a sense of peace that I get.
That makes sense.
Wow.
That's cool.
So do you think when do you think the joy set in? Because, like, it does seem like you're just always, when we talk, it seems like you're always just so thankful and grateful and joyful, just in general. Like, when do you think that, like, set in for you?
Through the hard experiences that I had to go through. I studied a branch of the Jewish faith, which is, gosh, I don't want to butcher it now, because if anybody listens and they hear it and they're like, that's not what it actually is, I don't want to be incorrect. I like studying and reading a lot of different kind of religious beliefs, but one of the things that the Jewish faith talked about is either the Kabbalion or something called the Zohar. But anyways, they were talking about how through some of these hard experiences that you go through, that is where you find life, and that's where you're going to find strength, and that's where you're going to grow. And I definitely found that to be true. There's an artist who I really love. I'll just share his story to give a little bit more background onto my finding of joy. If you guys have ever heard of Alex Gray, he is phenomenal. He does a lot of artwork for a band that I love called Tool. He's just a phenomenal psychedelic artist.
Does he do the DMT art?
Yes.
Yes, I have seen his work. That is amazing stuff he does.
Okay, good. I'm actually really happy that you guys have seen that, because he's a phenomenal artist. His story is that at an early age, he was extremely depressed and he was having a really hard time, and he made up the decision in his mind that he was going to kill himself. He didn't want to live anymore. And before he was going to go through with it, he went to a party. And at the party, they gave him LSD, and he met his wife. They fell in love, and ever since then, they've been in love, and he makes art. But it's incredible. He has a TED Talk, though.
That story.
Well, I would recommend listening to his TED Talk, because he talks about his background a little bit more, and he will definitely be able to share it more clearly than what I'm saying. But the part that resonated with me was that he was sharing some of the visions, I guess, that he had on LSD, and I don't want to butcher his story either, but one of the things that I took away was it was almost like he made a deal with the LSD that said, I'm not going to go through with this because I've seen what you're showing me, but if I'm not going to go through with this, then all I'm going to do for the rest of my life is create art and be in love with my wife.
Wow.
Yeah, right. It was so powerful. And so for me, like, I've talked a little bit about depression and trauma and all that stuff that I've gone through, and who knows whether or not I actually qualify. Like, as I look back, everything I've gone through has been, I've been privileged. Like, I've had it better off than I could have had it, but still dealing with some of the things I've dealt with, there were moments where I had to say, like, I don't want to be here anymore. And when I said that, I went into the psychedelic experience and almost made a deal where it was like, I see that there's more, I see that there's life, and if I am going to be here, if I am going to choose to stay, then I want to make my life count, and I want to enjoy it.
Wow.
Not like maliciously enjoy it, but in the good way.
I've had a experience where coming out of it, the thought was, I'm going to live life on my terms.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, and that really broke me down from being able to work in the traditional, like, hourly retail job, because, like, I'd see people who were struggling and I would tell them, like, hey, do you know that you could do this? Or do you know you could potentially look into psychedelics or look into these things? And obviously all of that is extremely taboo in those environments. Like, you're not even allowed to talk about it, which is hilarious to me, because every day you go into work and people are talking about politics and, whatever other relationship drama that they're dealing with. But then you want to talk about conscious, expanding ways to heal, and you're chastised. I had people at one point who were talking to me, telling me, oh, this sounds like you're dealing with some schizophrenia, Josh. And it's like, guys, come on. Like, what a cop-out for having an actual conversation.
Yeah, yeah. Lost opportunity there.
Right. But it's okay. I mean, it's not as if you have to invest in people who don't want to listen.
Right. I do think also people need to be ready to... You need to want to learn. You need to be open-minded about these sort of things, because it is so taboo.
Absolutely.
When you're not ready, you're just not going to be open to it.
It is funny, though, to, like, look at what's taboo and then see some of the things, like you were saying, Josh, that people talk about, like politics. Like, I know some people who are raised like politics are a personal, like, thing. Like, nobody needs to hear about it. And then I know some people who are just, like, extremely, like, outspoken about it. And it seems like in some circles, at least in some circles, like, psychedelics and expanding consciousness and just having conversations about, like, expanding consciousness or healing even, like, you would think that would not be so taboo, just in light of, like, so many other things being on the table for people, that are, like, personal, I guess.
Well, it hasn't actually been taboo, except for the last maybe, I don't want to say 200 years, but at least in our history, it's been probably 200 years that a lot of this has been repressed. The shamanic leaders and people of tribes and stuff have been using these things for thousands of years. The thing that I used that impacted me so severely was something called Salvia divinorum. And Salvia divinorum and magic mushrooms were originally discovered by the Western culture from a tribe, or not a tribe, but a group of people in Mexico that was using them. And what they would do, and they've used them for thousands of years, what they would do is basically take the leaves of this plant, Salvia divinorum, the raw leaves, and stuff as many of them as they could in their mouth and suck on the juice, and it would give them these crazy hallucinations. Now, I don't recommend doing Salvia divinorum. It is legal in in most states. It's legal, and you can get it at most like smoke shops, just under the counter. It's right there. It's really weird, but I don't recommend doing it. But understanding the historical kind of place that it's had in culture and in societies is important, because they've used it for thousands of years. They use it as a church ceremonial thing. And interestingly enough, the Catholic movement that came through in the conquest early on, they basically said, hey, all of your religious material that you use for Salvia divinorum and magic mushrooms, we need to change, and replace it all with Catholic leaders and Catholic, I'm going to butcher the words, but Catholic like value systems.
They believe it's a manifestation of the Virgin Mary, right?
Yes, correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
So how many times have you done salvia?
Once, and it was...
Yeah, same. Tell me about what happened to you.
Well, so I discovered salvia because I heard that it was the most powerful hallucinogen you could just buy. Yep. And that excited me, and I didn't know anything about it going into it, except I love Terence McKenna. He's one of the, he's a philosopher I just can't get enough of, and he's got a lot of stuff on YouTube. So I listened to everything I could find from him talking about salvia, which equated to about like 20 minutes, pretty much.
Yes. Yeah.
And then I watched all the videos that I could of people actually experiencing it and doing it. But the thing is that most people who do salvia, they did it in small pipes, or like they wouldn't smoke very much of it. They smoked small amounts. And when I actually did my salvia experience, I had probably a half a gram that I loaded into a bong. Okay. And I was alone. I decided to be alone, and I decided to be outside because I didn't want to be in an apartment and not know, like thrash around or whatever. Yeah. So I waited until it lined up to be the night of the full moon. So I waited till there was a full moon, and I found a nice place out kind of in like a park out along a trail, kind of by a river that I could sit at. And I loaded my bong, and the thing that I kept hearing people say is, oh, you got to torch it. You can't use a regular lighter. You got to use a torch, which I'm a huge advocate for weed. Like, I literally carry a dab rig on me all the time, and I have dabs on me all the time. And if I see you and you need dabs, I got you. Like, that's my level. Nice. And so I have a torch. I'm ready to go. And so people are saying, you got to torch it. Otherwise, you're not going to get the effect. You're not going to have the breakthrough experience. So I torch
until your vision shakes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I'm sitting, and I don't know what to expect. I had just ripped the dab, and I torch it, and all of a sudden I'm gone. Basically, I had been sitting in an area, and it was remember, it's dark, it's nighttime.
Yeah.
I had been sitting down, looking one direction, and as soon as I hit the bong, I was walking down the trail towards where I had just been sitting, and it was daytime. Oh, wow. And I was with a group of people talking to them.
What?
But and so the scary thing with salvia is that as soon as you take it, you don't remember that you've taken salvia. You can kind of remember that you've taken some type of drug, but you don't know what it is. And so as I'm walking down the trail area, it's daytime, and I'm talking to people. I realize, guys, I'm on a drug, and it's about to start. Like, it's setting in right now, which is so weird because I'm already hallucinating, right?
Yeah.
And so as I realize oh, I think I'm tripping, my speech slowed down really dramatically. I looked to the people that were with me and I said, guys, I don't want to be here anymore. But as I said that, like, the speech slowed down and I couldn't get it out. It was like, guys, I don't want to be here. And like,
did you know the people that you were with?
No. That was the other scary thing. I kept seeing so many different people. Salvia is weird because it kind of pushes you through dimensional spaces in a way. Is the only way I know how to describe it.
Yes.
Yeah, and so at one point, one of the sort of dimensional spaces that I was in, I was standing next to a restaurant. It was nighttime again, and there was a large fluorescent light, and I could see into the restaurant. It was full of people. It was like a bar. There was people kind of standing and maybe dancing, but very crowded. And I was standing outside talking to my boss, and consciously I could remember that it was a job I had worked at for, in my mind it was maybe years I had worked there. And as soon as I realized that, it was gone and I was in another space, totally different. Which was actually very terrifying. The whole experience in reality was about 30 minutes long. Mm-hmm. But what I was experiencing and feeling felt like it was happening for a period of about 6 or 7 months. Like, I actually felt like I was stuck, and I didn't realize I was on salvia the entire time that I was on it. And also the thing that's scary about salvia is what you, like with all the other psychedelics I've taken, it's more of like a filter that gets overlaid. Acid kind of does this neon filter where color will flash as you're looking at something. It'll be bright yellow, it'll be bright green, and then it'll be blue. But it's not the changing of the environment. And it's the same with mushrooms. You'll have, like, you close your eyes and you see hallucinations, but you're very much in the same room that you're in. Salvia, and I've heard DMT is similar, but I haven't had the experience. But with salvia, you are not in the same place. You're not in your body. You're not in the same...
It's another realm.
Right. And that was horrifying for me.
See, that scares me. I mean, I don't know if I would be brave enough to experience it. Because, like, I don't know. I don't know if I'd be brave enough to do that. Like,
can I ask Josh? Did you learn anything from that experience?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So, in the other dimensions, what was so scary is that at one point I felt like this deity or this being, this ultimate being, was telling me, "I'm taking your life and I'm erasing it, and I'm taking every memory that you've had. I'm taking every person that you knew and I'm erasing it. And by the way, the memories that you've had that I'm erasing weren't even real. The people that you knew were an imagination. They were your imagination. It was a dream, and it's gone." And that sense of this other reality slipping away, this like life that I've been living being gone, was so real to me that when I came out of the trip, I wasn't sure that it had been done. I wasn't sure that I was back into the real world.
Yeah. That reality is more real than this one.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that sense has never gone away. I still to this day, even in like a perfectly, what would be considered a sober state or whatever, still can't totally understand what it was that I was experiencing. But what I learned from it right away after the experience the next day, basically when the psychedelic wore off 30 minutes later, I was in a cold sweat, and I was on the trail that I was on at night again. I had been running up and down it, I realized, and how I came out of the trip is that I actually tripped while running, and halfway into falling down, became conscious again. So I was falling down like, oh man, I'm back in the real world.
wow.
Yeah, very weird. Very weird.
Do you think the trip was what got you out of it, or do you think you were already coming out of it and that was like what you needed?
Well, I don't really know. I have no idea. It's supposed to be an extremely short acting thing. Most people's experiences are about 10 minutes. Mine was 30.
Wow.
But when I came out of it, I just was like so relieved that I was back, and also in disbelief. Like, I didn't totally think that I was back. But the next day I got on the bus and I was going to work, and I just looked around at everybody on the bus, and I just felt this overwhelming sense of thankfulness that I was with other beings, because you feel like you're alone on Salvia, like you're the only soul and being that exists, and that is so scary. So when you see other people around, you just get this madly overwhelming sense of, oh my gosh, like, I'm a conscious being. I don't know what that means. I have a body. I don't know what that means. Nobody knows what that means or how we got here. But like, I have a consciousness and you have a consciousness, and we're both here at the same time right now. Like, we both are alive right now together. And I don't know what that means.
Like, who cares about the particulars? Like, let's just be happy we're here.
Right. Yeah, because, we get so caught up in trying to compartmentalize and understand our world that we forget that we're on a giant floating rock that's being shot through space, and we don't understand any of the forces that govern why we're here. We don't know what created us. We don't know why we were created. We have ideas and we have value systems that work well, but we've forgotten the fact that, like, at the end of the day, every human being is just trying to do their best.
Yeah.
To an extent. Like, everybody has the same lingering questions that are the big questions that go unanswered. And we just have to figure out how to live without getting the answers to those questions. Like, why are we here? Why don't we just fall off the earth? Why doesn't it, why is any of this happening?
It does seem like sometimes when we try to answer those questions, like, why do we not just fall off? Like, what is gravity? That kind of things. It seems like you lose the ability to connect with, like, life in general sometimes, because you get so caught up in trying to answer. It's just like you get frustrated with never coming to the bottom of the well, if you will. And so I think that's really cool that you have found this, like, feeling of, like, gratefulness, even if, like, it's not there all the time. I don't know, but, like, from what you describe and from talking with you, Josh, like, I mean, we go way back. I know you, but, like, just hearing your talk about being grateful and stuff, that's so cool to me. Like, you don't have all the answers together, but you're still grateful and you still, like, are just doing your best. Like, that's cool.
I'm hoping that in sharing these kinds of things, it will give other people the idea that it's something that they can at least look into for themselves. The interesting thing is that I still have all kinds of chaos and calamity happening in the background of my life. I resonate very much with the archetype of Job in the Bible, which, if you know about Job in the Bible, he basically had thing after thing taken away from him in the most painful and destructive way possible, truly to be painful and destructive to him. And despite that, he maintained his faith, which the thing is, like, it's so easy for me to sit here like right now and have that conversation and be like, yeah, you maintain faith even when everything is getting ripped away from you. But what I actually mean is, like, when you go through the experience and the unknown suddenly hits you in the face, like you're driving your car and it breaks down and you don't have the money to fix it, or you're getting the letters on your door that are saying, hey, you owe rent and where's the money, and just the life struggles that everybody's dealing with. I still have all of that. And it's like when those things hit and when they happen to you, it's easy to get angry and to think, okay, well, then it's my right to go out and either be destructive to the world or hurt other people, or even if you're not consciously thinking that subconsciously comes out. And so
sets in.
Yeah, or it becomes a sickness in you. Like, so many people have that sickness where they have a physical illness, but it's actually rooted in something that they're maybe not working out. That's going into some of my beliefs. Like, I don't know if that's medical or whatever, but it's definitely.
I've come from the same background that you have, Josh, but something that really still resonates with me today is, and what I mean by background is, like, the conservative, like, religious type. What What still resonates with me, though, is like that one verse, I think it's from Proverbs, where it's like, what comes out of a man's like mouth is in his heart. And it seems like even though you do go through those struggles and like you said, you resonate with the archetype of Job, like even though you're going through like life, you know, but still you're finding small ways to just like, you're still here and you're present and you're still choosing to be here. It seems like, I don't know, in your soul, you're still joyous and you're still seeking out like the good for yourself and the good for others. And that just seems to stem from somewhere inside, not just like existential, if you will.
Yeah, I do think that it comes from some of that background. And also I read a lot of, like, I love reading historical books and understanding things. When I came to LA, I started becoming friends with a lot of Armenian people and the Armenian culture that's out here. And I realized, like, first off, I was completely naive to that. I didn't know anything about their culture or anything that they had gone through. And so I started reading books about the Armenian genocide and the history of that. I've been hugely interested in understanding the history of World War II and the Jewish Holocaust. But the Armenian culture went through an extremely similar genocide at the same time. So I was going through some hard things last year and the year before, and honestly probably the last 10 years in a row I've been going through some hard things, I guess. And every time I find myself in these positions where I'm reflecting on my life, feeling bad, I'm reading a book. Like, in particular, I recommend reading a book called The Book Thief. Sorry, I was trying to remember it. It's called The Book Thief.
I've seen that. I haven't read it, though.
Okay. Well, it's one I definitely recommend. It's traumatizing. It wrecked me. I've never cried so many times in a book, and I'm a sensitive person. Like, I would consider myself pretty easy to, like, you can make me cry pretty easily, but this book wrecked me. And there's another book, I can't remember it right now. It's a book, maybe the name will come to me, but it's a book that's fictional based on things that people actually had to go through in the Armenian genocide. And it's brutal. I mean, at one point, I don't want to get into specifics, but just within the generations of our friends' grandparents, there was a point where the Armenian prisoners that were being moved were brought to a creek. They were brought to a little river after walking for miles and miles, and they were allowed to drink from the river. They were allowed to bend down and drink from the river. And while this kid's grandma was drinking from the river, they hit her in the back of the head with a rock and killed her and left her body, like hundreds of people's bodies, just in the river right there.
Wow.
Yeah, and so I'm going through my life and I'm like, you know, for me it's money or health things or whatever else that are like the minor things, like how am I going to pay for rent, or how am I going to pay for groceries, or how am I going to pay for my iPhone bill. And so as I'm feeling that sense of dread, I'm reading this book about these other people's experiences, thinking, how is it that you can feel bad about yourself? I'm so free. Like, even in poverty, like, I consider myself to be pretty impoverished, I suppose, compared to the general other Americans, not compared to the other people in the world, but compared to the other Americans. And even despite feeling that, I know that I have such crazy freedoms that I have just found. I've found that I'm able to ground myself by remembering what people have gone through. Another book that is really powerful, you guys have talked about Jordan Peterson, and I love that, but he recommends reading The Gulag Archipelago. That book is brutal. The first, I was listening to it on an audiobook. The first 4 hours of it, and it was hard to get through because it was truly this, but the first 4 hours of The Gulag Archipelago was just him recounting, they arrested this person for no reason, this is how long they were in jail. They arrested this person for this reason, this is how long they were in jail. And it's like, you just see the oppression and sort of hard things that governments and other people have been put through, or governments have put other people through, where it's like, you're not a prisoner at all. Like, I can get up and walk around and go places, or maybe I don't have money to go buy the cars that I want or the things that I want, but I have the freedom of choice to decide where I'm going to take my next step.
You know, something that, I mean, just hearing you talk about, like, reading about other stories that, like, not put you in your place, but just remind you of, like, some of the things that you do have to be thankful for. Tilly's story. Do you remember that, Josh? Like, your mom told me about that. I don't know if you're comfortable with me sharing that, like, right now. For sure. But, like, we can cut that. But
no, that's awesome. We can definitely go into that. That's awesome.
That story, still to this day, I actually have the book on my shelf. Like, I took it with me when I moved away from Illinois. But that story to this day has just, I don't know, it always throws me when I think about it, and it just makes me, like, it reminds me, like, even though when you do go through hard times, like, there are people that have gone through that or much worse, and they have still found ways to persevere in this life. You know, maybe they don't have, you know, the grateful heart or whatever it is, but, like, they persevere, and to me that's such a story that just strengthens you, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, that was an extremely powerful one, and my mom, growing up, she was a huge advocate for reading those types of stories to us and sharing that with us. She's the type of person who had also gone through really hard times, but was trying to bring something good into the world. And I think one of the things that I learned most recently is that when I was younger, I got disillusioned, I guess, by the church, or angry with the church, because growing up I had this sense of, and I don't go to a church right now or anything like that, so I'm really just speaking about a general population. But I got this sense that the church's responsibility was to bring, you know, unconditional love into the world. It was to bring forgiveness into the world. And when I was exposed to them and I got older, I had so many experiences that didn't reflect those things. Like, they were not unconditionally loving. They were not forgiving. You know, as soon as I slipped up in my relationship and did something wrong, it was like I was exiled from the church. And then when I started smoking weed so that I wouldn't, you know, commit suicide, I still was exiled by the church. And it's like, instead of them coming in and saying, okay, well, we're really just glad that you're still here, how can we help you?
Yeah.
I didn't receive that. So I became angry for many years. But I think one of the things that I learned most recently is my mom was trying to show me her beliefs about faith and religion. Like, she brought me up teaching me unconditional love and forgiveness, and that was the value of the church.
Yeah.
But I wasn't supposed to go into the church and get that from them. My mom was teaching me that because that, for some reason, and I don't know where, that was her mission. Bringing unconditional love and forgiveness was what she felt like God, or her spiritual belief, was about. And so she trained us in that and brought us up thinking that that's how we should act.
Yeah.
So now I've had this weird change where, you know, I've still, like I said, I haven't gone back to the church, having had the experiences where I felt rejected, but now I feel like I've come full circle and I've embraced a lot of those values and a lot of those things that I used to talk about, because it's not that I was expecting, or it's not that I should expect to get unconditional love and forgiveness and those things. It's that I should be putting those out into the world.
Yes, I agree with you. It's not that, like, yeah, no, dude, I totally get that. I just read this book, it's called The Relational Soul. I can't remember the first names. It's by two gentlemen, Plass and Caulfield. I don't know if you've ever heard of it.
No.
But they lean more towards, well, they're Christians, but their entire thing is about how we're relational beings dealing with other relational beings, and, like, their the entire book is just like, give grace to people, you know, because we've been given grace, and like we need community, but like also we need to be like understanding that community fails, and like, but their constant thing is like, give love and grace, like again and again and again. And to me, it's just like, I don't know, like, I mean, I don't really necessarily care what people believe. Like, I really care that people genuinely find peace and like happiness. That's how I like feel. But to me, it's just like refreshing to hear other people thinking like, you know what, like I shouldn't just expect this out of the world or a specific group of people. I need to be giving this to the world and to specific groups of people. Like this, like, I don't know, I feel like that's so powerful.
It stems from some of my belief from the yoga community too, where they really focus on how you are not able to fix other people. You can't correct other people. It's about working on yourself. And actually also, this is a theme that I took away from C.S. Lewis. I love the C.S. Lewis books, actually still to this day.
Oh.
Uh-oh, I think we lost Josh. Let's see if he pops back in.
I think he's muted right now.
Oh. Well, probably
Hold
not,
on,
because
let me
he would probably hear us saying that if he was just muted.
It's showing... Well, no, it's showing on my end that it's muted.
Oh.
It says ready, but no sound. 1 sec. Okay. Okay. Are you back?
There?
Yeah. We can hear you.
Oh, okay, good. Hey, awesome.
Okay.
Sorry about that little misconnection.
You're fine. All right. You were talking about C.S. Lewis. I don't know if you want to keep going.
Yeah, sure. Yeah? So I was just saying two of my favorite books. I still love C.S. Lewis. Two of my favorite books of all time are The Great Divorce and The Screwtape Letters. The Great Divorce, if you have psychedelic experiences, you will have a completely different perspective of what he was talking about in The Great Divorce, and I'm not unconvinced that he was doing psychedelics. He may have been, but for sure. But the Screwtape Letters has a really interesting point where they talk about how if you can distract people by either getting them to focus on issues that are, you know, in their community or even further outside of the community is better, like getting distracted with what's happening in other countries or, you know, foreign places all the time, always being plugged into that. If you can be constantly distracted in that way, then you can keep people from working on themselves. And if you can keep people from working on themselves, you can stop real change from happening. Because going back to the yoga community, their whole thing is if you change yourself, that is when you change the world. And it's not necessarily the grandiose, you change the whole world, but if you can change yourself, that's when you can have an impact on the world.
All right, guys, we're going to break right here, and you'll have to stay tuned for the second segment of Josh talking about his experiences in life. So yeah, stay tuned.
Stay tuned.